Poison in the Dock, Episode 2, George Henry Lamson. Welcome to Pete's World of Poisonous Plants, the channel where murder, medicine and myth all collide with a dose of British dark humour. This is Episode 2 of Poison in the Dock, Victorian Killers Unmasked, and today we're sinking our teeth into one of the strangest poison plots of the age. A respectable doctor, a paralysed young man, a slice of cake, and the queen of poisons, aconite. George Henry Lamson was a decorated surgeon, a man who had seen service abroad, but by 1881 he was drowning in debt. Desperate for money, he looked to his wife's inheritance. But there was a problem. The heir was her paralysed younger brother, Percy John. If Percy died, Lamson's wife would inherit, and Lamson would get his hands on the fortune. So Lamson turned to poison. His weapon of choice was aconitine, the deadly alkaloid from Aconitum napellus, monkshood, also called wolfsbane. Aconite is swift and cruel. It causes tingling, burning, vomiting, and finally death through heart and respiratory failure. Even a tiny amount can kill. On December 3, 1881, Lamson visited Percy at a boarding house in Wimbledon. He came bearing gifts, fruit, chocolates, and a slice of cake. He also carried powders in his pocket, aconitine he had purchased from a chemist, supposedly for medical experiments. After sharing cake and capsules with his unsuspecting brother-in-law, Percy collapsed with violent stomach pains, numbness, and convulsions. Within hours, he was dead. Suspicion fell quickly on Lamson. But here's the catch. Aconitine was almost undetectable at the time. Victorian toxicologists had no reliable chemical test. The police had circumstantial evidence. Lamson had bought aconite, he had debts, and he had stood to gain from Percy's death. But they couldn't put the poison in Percy's body with absolute certainty. At the trial in March 1882, the Old Bailey was gripped. Experts described Percy's agonising symptoms and how they matched aconite poisoning perfectly. Witnesses testified about Lamson's purchase of aconitine and his presence at the scene with the cake. Lamson's defence argued that the cause of death was natural illness, not poison. After all, no chemical proof existed. But the jury wasn't swayed. The mountain of circumstantial evidence was too great. They returned a verdict of guilty. The judge, donning the black cap, sentenced Lamson to death. On April 28, 1882, George Henry Lamson was hanged at Wandsworth Prison. He denied everything to the end, but history remembers him as the doctor who weaponized a piece of cake. Lamson's case exposed just how hard it was for Victorian police to prove poisonings. Without a chemical test, they had to rely on symptoms, testimony, and motive. The Dundee Cake Murder became a landmark in toxicology, pushing scientists to develop more reliable methods to catch poisoners who hid behind undetectable plant alkaloids. So that was Episode 2 of Poison in the Dock, Victorian Killers Unmasked, the case of George Henry Lamson, aconite, and the fatal Dundee cake. If you enjoyed this poisonous slice of history, give this video a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Pete's World of Poisonous Plants for Episode 3, where another Victorian poisoner steps into the dock. Because in the world of Victorian crime, even a piece of cake could kill you.